Hello, I'm Mark Welther, president of the nonprofit Redwood Forest Foundation, which we affectionately call RFFI. Welcome to RFFI's first ever virtual annual meeting. In any other year, the annual meeting, which is everybody's favorite community barbecue, would be out in a beautiful Redwood Grove. But this year we are coming to you from various locations throughout California and Southern Oregon. So while you're comfortably sheltered in place, let's take a virtual trip through the woods and also meet some of the people who make up RFFI's community. To begin the program, we want you to participate. So let's get you warmed up with a quick poll. Please answer the following questions. Where are you joining us from today? While you answer that question, here's an overview of today's event. Over the next 90 minutes, we will be featuring video footage of RFFI's 50,000-acre Usal Redwood Forest, an overview of our forest management, restoration, tree planting, and community recreation projects, and a featured speaker. Unfortunately, our featured speaker today, Lila Connors of Tree Media, is ill and had to cancel at the last minute. But we are working and hoping to have Tree Media's award-winning cinematographer, Harun Mehmedinov, who will also answer questions in a question and answer session. And so we're looking forward to that as well. So here are the results of the poll. 88% of our viewers are from California. 3% are from the West. 8% are from east of the Rockies. And 2% are from outside the United States. That's really interesting and wonderful, and we hope more people will join us as the program goes on. Now, before we begin our program, I'd like to recognize and thank many of the wonderful sponsors who've made today's event possible. Our Redwood sponsors are Tree Media, Barnett Logging, KOZT Radio, The Coast, Southern California Gas, U.S. Forest Capital, our good friend Tom Tuckman, and our Douglas Fir sponsors are BBW and Associates, that's Baldwin, Bloomstrom, and Wilkinson, California Strategies, the San Francisco accounting firm of Novogradac and Company, and the law firm of Schwabe, Williamson, and Wyatt. Now, one of the advantages of a virtual meeting is that people from all over the world and all over the country can join in. I would like to take a special moment here to recognize some of RFFI's founders and early supporters who are joining us today. They include Bill Evans from Philadelphia, Charles Peterson from Colorado Springs, Tom Tuckman from Portland, Oregon, and Don Kemp from New Orleans, and also our locals, Art Harwood, Pete Passoff, Henry Gundling, Linda Perkins, Bill Heil, and Steve Smith. Now, a couple of quick words about this Zoom conference. We're broadcasting this event live today, so if you have any general questions or questions for our speakers, Lynn and Mitzi are moderating our Q&A, and you can access that at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to type in any questions you have. Also, recordings of all the videos and presentations will be available after today's event on our website, www.rffi.org. Now let's get into the program. It gives me great pleasure to introduce RFFI Board Chair Kathy Moxon. I've had the good fortune of working closely with Kathy for the past 7 years. She's been on the RFFI board since 2003 and board chair for more than 10 years. Kathy lives in Northern California's Humboldt County and has been a leader in economic and community development in rural Northwest California for the past 30 years. RFFI and I have thrived because of Kathy's passion, commitment, and leadership. Please welcome our RFFI Board Chair, Kathy Moxon.
Thanks, Mark. I'm glad you all joined us today. You know, sheltering in place in Redwood country has its advantages. I think this is the first time I put on earrings in 3 months. So that's nice. You know, at our strategic retreat this year, and we do that every year, there were 32 board, staff, and community stakeholders. And one of the first things we did was we revisited our origin story, just to get back to our roots. And in that origin story, I thought you might want to go over it again too. So remember that there was a diverse and courageous group of Mendocino community members who really had one thing in common, and that was the love of the place they lived. They were sort of caught in the chaos of the timber wars and Redwood summer, and were watching as large tracts of timberland were cut over and then sold or converted to other uses, mainly vineyards in Mendocino County and homes. Those same tracts of lands were the ones that built the economies of those communities, and that created some angst. So they could envision, though, a timberland sustainably managed where profits didn't go to distant corporate pockets, but were reinvested in the health of the forests and in the communities. They had a dream, but there were questions. Could a community group, not government, but a community group really purchase timberland, like put the money together to purchase timberland? Could environmentalists, loggers, academics, elected officials, foresters, and other interested community members really agree on forest management decisions? Could forests in the conditions they're in be actively managed to pay the bills and pay back the debt without compromising future ecosystem health? Could a new relationship really be forged between the forests and the residents? Well, here we are, 13 years into that challenge, and sometimes it still feels like we're at the beginning of that journey. As you know, we purchased Usal Forest in 2007, and we sort of consider Usal Redwood Forest as our laboratory. It's the place where we engage residents in governance and management decision-making. It's the place where we do sustainable forest management and ecosystem restoration. We do job creation there, we create cultural partnerships there, and we provide educational opportunities on that land. We have a lot to be proud of. After all, we did purchase 50,000 acres when people thought it couldn't be done, and some even felt like a community had no business owning timberland. We sold a conservation easement to help reduce the debt. We got our Forest Stewardship Council certification. We have hired an outstanding RFFI staff and an extremely competent forest management team. We did the development and implementation of the largest carbon sequestration project in California, 8th in the nation. Our biochar project was highlighted in the DiCaprio documentary, Ice on Fire. Those are pretty significant milestones for a community group who had a dream. You know, this past year, we've been really developing a deep understanding of the conditions of the forest. The conditions created by aggressive profit taking at the expense of forest health. And it will take time to restore this forest to productivity. We purchased the property with the help of Bank of America, and we're grateful they helped make us happen. It would not have happened if they were not there. And now we're on the road to repaying the debt, and I'm happy to say we're current on payments. In fact, we're actually ahead of schedule on paying the bank. We're presently doing light touch forestry with a significant amount of restoration, and income from our carbon credit sales is what allows us to do that. We've been doing some citizen science. One is tracking the sudden oak death on our property, which there has not been, but we do testing on a regular basis. And we are planting redwoods both on Usal and on other properties with our Plant a Redwood tree. But, you know, there's still more to do. We're talking about the future of the forest and trying to define what restoration forestry looks like on Usal. Not an easy task. A lot of us are lay people and aren't foresters. So us just getting our arms around what that even means and the decisions that go into play when you're thinking about the future condition of forests has been an interesting task for me, I know. We'd like to restructure the balance of our debt, better aligning our debt payments with the capacity of the forest to pay it off in a timely manner. We're about ready to close on our first purchase of additional property called the Rice Ranch, which is a 95-acre ranch within the borders of Usal. And that property will also be covered with a conservation easement. It's integral to our timber operation because we own timber around it. So purchasing it was the right thing to do for our integral timber operation. But we're also beginning to imagine what the buildings that are on that property might be used for. So that'll be interesting to see in the future. We continue to expand resident engagement in both governance and management decision-making. And then we have a target of completing our long-range strategic plan early this year. So we have a lot to do, but we enjoy it. I am still as committed as I was when I got involved in 2000. And I want to thank all of you who came before me and all of you who walk with me right now in this endeavor. I hope that all of you out there on this call are here at the annual meeting because you see the possibilities. You share our dream. Just get involved. This is the year. Get involved and be part of RFFI's story of success. So thanks again. Stay tuned in. This is a great show. I've already seen it a couple of times. You know, usually this event is in person and we can all talk to each other and share our excitement about RFFI, our reasons for coming to RFFI. And what we did this year, since we couldn't be in person, was we sent out a call for videos of what RFFI means to you. And you know what? People responded. And you're going to get to see some of those. Thanks to everyone who contributed a video or audio recording. And here are the first 4 videos we'll see today of the voices from our community.
I've been with RFFI for about 20 years now and have seen it develop from an idea to save forest lands and gradually restore them to surmounting the challenges we actually face on the ground. RFFI has many dedicated and patient supporters and a great forestry staff who all share our long-term vision of harmony between healthy forests and thriving communities. Today, with devastating climate change upon us, redwoods are the best carbon sink we know of. They may save us if we can save them.
Hi, my name's Erin Kelly. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Forestry at Humboldt State University, and I support the Redwood Forest Foundation, and I'm a council member because it's a great example of what happens when a lot of really committed, determined people from different backgrounds come together with a common interest in restoring ecosystems and restoring redwood forests.
My interest is in supporting RFFI in the ongoing challenging transition from a merely extractive relationship to forests to a fully ecological one sustaining the mutually supportive, interdependent communities that rely on and interact with each other, be they above or below ground, internal or external to the forest. I'm gratified to see the breadth of innovative, creative approaches that RFFI is pursuing.
I think the RFFI model of forest management has proven itself to be an excellent template for the management of forest lands, possibly throughout the world. The private, not-for-profit status gives it some protection against the economic incentives that lead to overforestation in many cases, and the private aspect of it shields it from political whims that can come and go. So I think it's possibly not only applicable to forest lands, but it might also be applicable to any type of renewable resource. So it's really critical that the Usal project continue to be successful because it's the proof of concept. Other people are starting to emulate this type of approach already, and the more successful Usal is, the more successful we'll be in propagating this methodology throughout the world.
Our next presenter is Linwood Gill, the Chief Forester of RFFI's Usal Redwood Forest Company. When we acquired the Usal Forest in 2007, we inherited a traditional forest management company. So the hiring of Linwood in January of 2017 was a very exciting moment for RFFI. Finding the right forester to lead our in-house forestry team was essential to our success, and we found the right man. Linwood joined RFFI after 30 years as a private consultant forester for small and non-industrial landowners. And as Chief Forester, he oversees all aspects of operations in the Usal Forest, including timber harvesting, reforestation, stand improvement, budgeting and finance, and restoration projects. He is the founding member of the widely respected Forest Stewards Guild and strongly supports the Guild's principle that a forester's first duty is to the forest and their future. One of his favorite quotes is that a forester is remembered not for what he takes, but for what he leaves behind. So I'm pleased to introduce Linwood Gill. Linwood, take it away.
Great, thanks, Mark. Really happy to be here and be part of the Redwood Forest Foundation and in this role at the Usal Redwood Forest Company. Preparing for this presentation today, I always kind of look back at different quotes and sayings that kind of really ring true to me and what this organization is about. And just kind of thumbing through one of my favorite books, which is Donald Peaty's Natural History of Western Trees. As it implies, it's a description of all the different tree species in the Western United States. He goes into a lot of prose of kind of flowery language describing different trees, and even some trees that a lot of people don't think of very fondly. His language is just great, and I just love reading his descriptions. And reading what he has to say about redwoods. One thing really hit me thinking about this conversation, and he talks a lot about how in the beginning everybody thought the redwoods were inexhaustible. They were these huge trees. There's no way you would cut all these trees down. But his book was written in 1950, and by that time there were Caterpillar tractors. Land that was too steep or inaccessible for earlier logging methods were now available and exploited to extreme levels in some cases. No longer did they think about how are they going to get them down to the bottom of the hill and float them down the river. It was more of, well, let's go up there and get them. And they built roads and tractor skid trails all over the place. And as with water, the path of least resistance is downhill and right along the ravines and the creeks. And that's where they built the roads. That's where they built the skid trails. And the effects were devastating in some places. And he goes on to talk about how important the species was for the local communities in the area because it gave them the jobs to get established. But then he asks, I'm going to kind of paraphrase this a little bit, is this something that we should be proud of or indignant? It's easy to give a quick emotional answer, depending on your economic persuasion or your aesthetic values. But if one person or is appointed the arbiter for, had the sole responsibility, to do justice to these conflicting interests, then, every viewpoint has to be looked at. And it kind of closes it with, you have to acknowledge that, we have an awakening consciousness that this heritage, meaning the redwoods of all ages, calls for our responsibility. And that's where I think we are at with RFFI and the Usal Redwood Forest Company. We have been given this responsibility to manage this land that once held the most amazing coniferous forest on the planet. No doubt there are many conflicting interests in how we manage that. And we are accountable, to balance those interests, not only for the benefit of the local community, but, with our realization of climate change, the global community, and managing these forests for that reason also. And we all take that responsibility very seriously here at Usal Redwood Forest Company and the Redwood Forest Foundation. So Kathy mentioned that, sometimes she thinks about this as our laboratory. And I couldn't agree with her more. One of the principles of the Forest Stewards Guild talks about always having to learn from the forest. And that's what we are doing now. We are gaining knowledge on what works on this particular property. And as our forest grows and matures, so does our staff. And I actually envy some of our younger staff members right now because they have come on to this property at a drastic change in its future, and they will have the opportunity to hopefully build a whole career on this 50,000 acres. And nothing is more important for the land than to have someone that manages it for so long that they get to understand it and get to see how, how these different interactions happen with, our management activities and how the forest actually responds to that. So, and speaking of our staff, I have to say we're going to have a video here in a second, and we're going to see some of the work that has been done. But our forestry staff, particularly Jeff Hauser, who is our forest operations manager, Joaquin Quintana, and Travis Muñez, who are our forest technicians. They're the real boots on the ground. Most of this work that we're going to see would not happen without them on the property. And then another staff member, Karen Youngblood, you will see her give a little presentation here in a little bit. And also want to reiterate just briefly that if you have questions about what we're doing or something you see in the presentation, go ahead, jot it down in the question and answers. I will look at those near the end, and if I have time, I will try to answer 2 or 3 of those. So with that, on with our tour. We're going to look at the Usal Beach Timber Harvest Plan, or THP. As we scan around the hillside here, we're starting to get into the area that we logged. You see a few little openings here and there, but most of this was done as a single tree selection. And so from a distance, you don't see a whole lot. We're going to swing around kind of the upper part of the watershed. Soldier Creek is off to the left. Karen's going to talk about that in a minute. And as we swing back around to this side, or I guess it would be the south side of Usal Creek, we're going to see, some of our activity a little closer. We have a group selection. You can see a little bit of that. And then as we scroll down, we kind of blend into the single tree selection. And single tree selection, we're looking at taking out individual trees here and there. Here's the top of a redwood circle, the sprouting coming off the old stumps. This is what it looks like from above. We took out 2 or 3 trees out of there, leaving the better trees to grow for the future. We're going to scan over a little bit to the group selection straight from above. And most of our group selections are smaller, typically like about an acre, acre and a half in size. This one is just about an acre. And even within the group, we like to leave trees that will be future legacy trees or potential seed trees now. And on our groups, we're going up along the side of the group right now. We like to find places that already have what we consider kind of advanced regeneration. Here's a redwood sprout, probably like about 10 years old, 15 years old. So by allowing more light into where we already have some regeneration started, it really kind of jump starts that next age class. And that's what we're really looking for. We're looking for a multi-age forest out there. And a lot of this is, been clear cut in the past, and it is typically all the same age. Here is our, our single tree selection area. And one of the first things we look for is, which trees do we want to leave? Which are the trees that we want to grow, in our, to our largest diameter classes available to us. And again, here's where's redwood sprouting off of an old growth stump. You can look down on the ground and you can see, I think, two of the smaller trees that we removed. So we're kind of reducing that competition. And redwood, a lot of times it's for, it's for water. Sometimes it's for light if we take out one of the more codominant trees. Now, this is the classic example of the trees we want to grow into the future. Tall, straight, nice live crowns, and very clean boles. Now these trees are starting to get to the size we want, but they're not quite there yet. It's kind of hard to tell how big they are. I'm going to step away, go stand next to this tree for a second. And as I walk up to the tree, you can see, kind of get a feel for how big those trees are. This one I'm coming up to is roughly about 28, maybe 30 inches in diameter. And ideally, we want to grow trees up to 3-4 feet in diameter, in which case then we may make a call to never harvest that tree, or it's one that we'll harvest at some point in the future. Now in front, you'll see, it looks like a big stump. It's actually 2 trees. Off to the left, there's a center of one tree, and to the right is the other. And those 2 trees were fused together, and typically we like to remove those trees when they're like that, unless they have special wildlife features. So let's head back up the road, and we'll take a look at a couple wildlife trees. Off to the right, you'll see a couple redwoods. In the center is a Douglas fir. Typically, we like to remove the Douglas fir that's competing with the redwoods. But in this case, a little further to the left, here's another redwood tree, has a broken top, has some of those features that a lot of these younger forests lack. And so when we see these, we want to encourage them. We want that tree to get bigger. It probably won't get a whole lot taller, but it has this nice flat lateral limb, nice platform for future nesting habitat. But that Douglas fir off to the right, if we would have cut that tree, it would have just fallen right on top of that lateral limb. So that's something we left so we could benefit the wildlife habitat. All right, I'm going to move up the road again a little bit further. We've got a lot of invasive plants on the property, particularly Scotch broom, pampas grass. Most of that comes in along the edge of the roads. Seed brought in years ago on equipment and vehicles. So we're, masticate some of that back so we have better access into the property. Here's after the work is done. Road is nice and clear, suitable for fire trucks, logging trucks, personal vehicles, safer to come around a turn when you can actually see what's on the other side of the turn. Going to move over a little bit further on the property to some of our timber stand improvement work or pre-commercial thinning. This is about a 25-year-old clear cut from previous owners. We went in, cut back a lot of the competing vegetation, again for water competition, and thinning out some of the other redwoods or Douglas fir around, so better sunlight. You can kind of see from above, you've got a little bit of a better spacing between these crowns. You can almost kind of visualize what happens as those trees get older. And this is actually one of our 2017 timber harvest plans, Mill Creek Eel. You'll see some gaps in here in the middle. Those were areas where it was kind of patchy, a lot of tan oak. And we took the tan oak out to help facilitate our biochar program. Luckily, we had a landing right here. Logs were skidded down, chipped, and then taken over to the biochar facility. This year, we went in, cleared off all of the slash that was left, and then flattened the top of it out a little bit more so it was suitable for CAL FIRE or California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection for their fire prevention protection work, and also air ambulance service. So a lot jammed in there really quickly, but that is our a tour of the property. So if you do have any questions after the presentation is over, my email address is simple, Linwood, LINWOOD, @RFFI.org. Feel free to drop me an email, and I'll be glad to talk with you more about the work we're doing on the Usal Redwood Forest Company. Another thing that happened this past year, many of you know, we have our Plant a Redwood program, and people make a donation in honor of maybe somebody having a birthday, maybe someone had passed away, and kind of in memory of them, we plant trees in their honor. And this year, we actually hosted a tree planting gathering. One of our biggest contributors to that program is the CaliRoots Music Festival down in Monterey Bay. They came up did a little video for us. We had several community members come out who had made donations in memory of loved ones and actually planted those trees for them. It was a really moving experience to be out there and with them that day. And I was really proud to be part of that day. So anyway, with that, thank you again for coming, and enjoy this little video clip. We got 150 trees to plant today, so we've got some area to put them in. But if you feel encouraged to plant in one particular spot, feel free to do that. There's a nursery in Oregon in Cottage Grove that one of the nursery managers used to grow trees here on the coast, and he really knows how to grow redwoods. So that's why we get our trees from him.
And how old are those? Is that seedling?
1 year.
1 year old.
1 year. Yep.
Hi everyone, it's Amy from CaliRoots. We are up here in the beautiful Mendocino County Forest, and we are here planting redwood seedlings on behalf of all of our redwood ticket holders.
Thank you, Redwood Pass holders. This one's for Grandma. This is Lula's tree.
The profits that we make from the Usal Redwood Forest Company go into the Redwood Forest Foundation, and then that in turn will go help support the local community by making donations to, local schools, local fire departments, local hospital districts. By letting the trees grow more than what you're cutting, not only are you increasing carbon, but you're improving the structure and the long-term potential of what the forest can maintain.
Next up is Karen Youngblood, a member of Linwood's forestry team. We're fortunate to have Karen join Ruffy as our forest conservation specialist in July 2018. Karen graduated from UC Santa Cruz with a bachelor's degree in environmental studies and also has a master's degree from Humboldt State University in natural resources with an emphasis in forestry. Karen is our resident expert naturalist and field biologist, leads the Usal forest restoration programs, and is also our in-house mapping expert. Please welcome Karen Youngblood.
Thanks, Mark, and hello. Thanks for joining us today. I'm so happy to be here to share with you some of the great restoration work we're doing on Usal Forest. And even though our annual meeting this year is this indoors virtual format, it's a nice opportunity for me to take advantage of being able to share with you some of the maps and photos of the restoration work we're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And start out with where in the biological world is Usal Redwood Forest. So if you look at the map on the left, you can see Usal Redwood Forest is the light green outline, and it's right in the heart of the coastal redwood range in Northern California. And the coastal redwoods grow no other place in the world. If you look at the map on the right, you can see Usal Redwood Forest is also right in the middle of salmon spawning country. We have the different colors in the map on the right show the range of coho, steelhead, and chinook, all of which are salmonids with declining populations to the point where they've become threatened and endangered. So Usal Redwood Forest has significant biological importance. And because of that, we have a responsibility to restore salmon habitat and try to prevent further degradation to the forest. We have a responsibility to do restoration, and we have a need to do restoration. The bad news is we've inherited a forest that has had decades of intensive industrial logging on steep ground with naturally unstable thin soils, which has resulted in more than normal landslides, road failures, significant erosion, habitat destruction, riparian deforestation, hazardous fuel buildup, and ultimately resulting in degraded wildlife habitat and less than desirable forest health. The good news is we now have many opportunities for restoration. The other good news is we have a great team to do restoration with. These are some of our key players. In this photo, we're out in the field last summer in the Stanley Creek watershed, heading to the Stanley Creek watershed to start planning our next project. Oh, there we go. So this is a list of many of the people and groups involved in almost every one of our restoration projects. So watershed restoration really does take a community, from funders to grant managers, to project managers, to planners, to technical advisors, to biologists, archaeologists, and general supporters. We could not do as many restoration projects and have as much success with completion and quality of work without all of these folks. So before I go any further, I'd like to define some of the common stream restoration terms that we throw around a lot when we're talking about stream restoration. So first of all, salmonids. Salmonids are fish in the family Salmonidae, which includes coho, chinook, steelhead, and trout. And for us, we're really talking about coho and steelhead. The streams on Usal Redwood Forest are relatively small, are smaller streams than the larger rivers, and the coho and the steelhead just love these streams, and they're found in the highest numbers. In-stream enhancement with large wood structures. Large wood structures are intentionally designed, strategically placed pile of trees in the stream channels to enhance fish habitat. And they're really the most simple thing, the most important and effective thing that we do to enhance fish habitat. The large wood structures scour pools, they create side channel habitat for winter refuge, they create cover, they sort sediment. So they create a complex of habitat types that are beneficial to all life stages of salmonids. Road decommissioning is often restoration work we do in conjunction with large wood structure installation. And road decommissioning is complete removal of streamside roads, recontouring the hillside with an excavator. And essentially these roads, these streamside roads, are no longer used. they're not maintained, they're failing in many locations along the road surface and causing significant erosion into the streams, which greatly degrades fish habitat. And then finally, sedimentation. Sedimentation is simply just erosion from hill slopes into the streams. So this map it's pretty busy. There's a lot going on here. And the main thing I want you to notice in this map is the watersheds that are colored in orange and yellow, which have been identified as our key watersheds, priority watersheds for restoration. And these are watersheds where we actually have decent populations of coho and steelhead. And so these are areas where our restoration work will give us the biggest bang for our buck, and we actually have a good chance of recovering the fish populations. The other thing in this map that I'd like you to notice is where we have done restoration. Since 2008, we've been doing stream restoration almost every year. And the areas highlighted in purple are the streams where we've done large wood installations. The areas highlighted in green are where we've done road decommissioning. So now I'm going to show you some of the photos of what restoration work looks like on the ground. In the photo on the left, we have an up-close look at a large wood structure. You can see there's the tree with root wad and all. In fact, root wads are especially effective of doing all the things that we want the large wood structures to do: create pools, sort sediment, and create cover. And you can see the top of the trees on the bank are anchored with the live trees still standing in the floodplains. On the right, you can see more large wood structures in the distance. And then we also have the CDFW, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife spawning survey crew. This is on Anderson Creek, and Anderson Creek is a coho stronghold. So we have been monitoring it on an annual basis, and we have spawning crews out there estimating the salmonid populations. These photos are a look of why we do road decommissioning. They're both taken from a streamside road along Moody Creek, which is a tributary to Indian Creek, which drains into the South Fork Gill River. And last year, this road was decommissioned. But before it was decommissioned, these were some of the problem areas. You can see in the photo on the left, the big hole in the middle is where the roads failed, and all of that soil has sloughed off and washed down to the stream below. And again, on the right, you can see this redwood has taken root on what used to be the road surface, and over the years has eroded significantly and washed into the stream. These photos show what road decommissioning looks like before and after. So on the left, you have a road right before it's decommissioned. You can look at the stump and use it as reference in both photos. On the right, this is what it looks like after the road's been decommissioned. The hillside's been recontoured. Tree branches are left on the ground to help control erosion before vegetation grows back. And finally, this slide shows work that was done on Soldier Creek last year. This is a road on the left that was decommissioned, recontoured to its slope. And then on the right is a picture of one of the redwood seedlings that was planted every year with our restoration projects. When the road decommissioning and in-stream structures have been completed, we have a reforestation crew who comes in and plants redwoods where they're needed. So we'll continue to do stream restoration projects as needed, but we're also starting to look more at forest health restoration. And especially for us, that means fuel reduction. Usal Redwood Forest is a young forest that's overstocked. We have many areas with really dense, small trees that really need to be thinned to encourage better growing conditions. So we have several projects that we're doing that are fuel reduction projects. One is a shaded fuel break, and a shaded fuel break is, it's not just a total clearing of land to act as a fire break, but it's actually a clearing of the young understory trees and the ladder fuels and the hazardous down fuels along ridge lines, but keeping the larger mature trees, which are fire resilient. And the idea is to have open growing conditions where if there was a catastrophic wildfire, the rate and severity of the wildfire will be slowed down in the shaded fuel break. We also are planning a paired watershed study. A paired watershed study is when you use two watersheds with similar characteristics, and you have one watershed as a control and the other watershed that receives treatment, and then you can test the result of the treatment. And so, for example, we have two watersheds in Stanley Creek watershed, two sub-watersheds, two small drainages draining into Stanley Creek, where the forests are very thick, they need to be thinned, and the stream flow is also very low in the summer. And so what we want to do is propose thinning treatments in one of the paired watersheds and look at the effect on stream flow. And what we're hoping is with our hill slope treatments, we can both benefit the forest, improve forest health conditions, as well as improve conditions for the fish. And lastly, we have this fall, we'll be starting a biochar project. And this is a little different than the biochar work we've done in the past, where this is a biochar in place project where we'll be using kilns to process biochar, portable kilns to process biochar, and then reapply the biochar to the soils. So biochar is essentially charcoal. It's made from burning biomass. It stores carbon because the biomass is not burned to ash. And when it's returned to the forest soils, we will actually be studying the effect on the growing conditions of the vegetation in the area and also on the soils. So this is a picture that shows what one of the portable kilns looks like. This is this kiln is called Ring of Fire. It's 6 feet in diameter. You can see each metal piece is connected together, and temporarily you can dismantle it and throw it in the back of a pickup truck. So we'll have 6 of these kilns at 2 different locations on our forest starting this fall, winter. And we'll be able to process our biomass, our fuel that has built up, that we have staged from our fuel reduction projects, and we'll be able to create biochar and reapply it to the soils and see what happens. So I just want to close with saying Usal Redwood Forest is situated in a special place on Earth. We have a responsibility and a need to do restoration. We have an abundance of opportunities to do restoration, and we have an amazing restoration community to do restoration work with. Thank you so much for joining, and if you have interest and want to hear more about our restoration work, please don't hesitate to contact me. My email is karen@rfi.org, and I hope to talk to you in the future.
Thank you, Karen. A great presentation, and you can see why Kathy said that we have such a terrific staff. Next, I want to bring up another one of our Voices from the Community videos. As Kathy mentioned, the Redwood Forest Foundation was founded by a diverse group of community members, including environmentalists, loggers and mill owners, bankers and lawyers, tribal peoples, academics, agency representatives, and others. And today the community is represented in our membership, our board of directors, and also on our advisory committee, which we call the Redwood Forest Council. Their involvement is one of the important ways that the Redwood Forest Foundation is unique. So in order to give you a flavor of the passion and diversity of our community, we put out a request for short video testimonials, and I even made one myself. And we then put them together, put 10 of them together into these 3 short clips. We've shown you one already, and now we're going to show you the second of those, featuring the voices from the Redwood Forest Foundation community.
RFFI and the Usal Redwood Forest are part of the model for social, economic, and environmental change so necessary today. The RFFI model is arduous and complex and is moving steadily along between the South Fork Gill River and Usal and the St. County Wilderness Coast. RFFI is dedicated to the ideals of forest, watershed, and cultural restoration. RFFI needs your support. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anna Halligan. I'm the North Coast Coho Project Director for Trout Unlimited. We are a longtime restoration partner of the Redwood Forest Foundation. We have successfully partnered on about 20 restoration projects that benefit salmon and steelhead. Most of this work has been focused on reducing sediment and enhancing in-stream habitat by adding large wood. The things I really like about working with the Redwood Forest Foundation include that our missions are very closely aligned and that we are able to work on a landscape scale, treating entire watersheds so that we can successfully recover an endangered iconic species.
We know that our squabbling politicians cannot lead us back to this. We get this again by embracing what remains and caring for it. Go online, conjure RFFI, conservatives, professionals, liberals, radicals, working together, embracing our forests, caring for them the way all battered beings need. Forestry is permaculture. Let's help RFFI get this again for all of us.
Now, I mentioned at the beginning that our featured speaker, Lila Connors, would not be able to join us today, and that we were hoping to have Harun Mehmedinov as our speaker, and we have now confirmed that Harun is going to be able to join us. But before we have him join us, we would like to show a brief trailer of the movie Ice on Fire. Ice on Fire is a 2019 climate disruption documentary produced by Tree Media for home box office HBO, and directed by Lila Connors and co-produced and narrated by Leonardo DiCaprio. Ice on Fire showcases natural and technological climate change solutions. It's filmed around the globe. The magnificent cinematography by Harun Mehmedinov captures the beauty of the planet worth saving. The Redwood Forest Foundation first became involved in the project because we are practicing on a large scale 3 of the 5 natural solutions for drawing down carbon, as outlined by the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, the well-known 2018 IPCC report. So now I'd like to introduce Harun Mehmedinov. RFFI is very pleased to welcome him. He was on our short list of preferred speakers when we set up this event, and as it turns out, he is able to join us today. I met Harun when he first came to the Usal Forest in 2017 to film Ice on Fire. He is the cinematographer and co-producer of the film. Harun is a regular video and photography contributor to BBC Earth and has contributed photographs and videos to Vogue Italia, National Geographic, Astronomy Magazine, BBC Travel, Discovery Science, and Blindfold Magazine. His photography work has been featured by various media outlets, including the New York Times, Wired, Time, Forbes, NPR, CNN, the Los Angeles Times, and the Washington Post. Harun is also the author of 3 books and has been the subject of a TEDx talk. So please join me in welcoming Harun Mehmedinov.
Hi, thanks for having me. I apologize a little bit here that I'm in a bit of a remote area and video is probably not going to work for me, so I'll just do it by audio, and hopefully I can address some of the questions that Lila would have addressed or issues, but I can also talk a little bit about the production of the film because I had probably spent the most time of anybody on the entire crew as far as shooting, like physical time out there somewhere doing videos and time lapses and so on. So I've probably except for Lila, the best knowledge about what had happened during the production of the film. And I've been basically to every location that's in the film. I was part of every shoot that's on screen, so which is atypical for a documentary where usually you're hiring many different shooters. They go around and are local to different areas, and they do that. So in this film, it was very sort of travel-heavy film, in which me and one or two other people would have been almost at every location. So we can talk a little bit about that, and we can address a little bit about what Lila was going to speak about. And to give you just a bit of a background on the film, this was conceptualized and by Leonardo DiCaprio and his company, which is called Appian Way. They wanted to make a movie that addresses the issues of methane, and this was after the methane class rate gun theory, or whatever it's precisely called, was out. It was a theory that the way that the Earth is warming is going to result in this sudden release of methane because of the collapsing permafrost, and that is eventually going to amount to an almost total extinction. And at that time, there was some concern that this theory was going to hold true in a very short term, and they wanted to make a movie quickly about it. Since then, the science has, found out a little bit more on this issue, and they're less inclined to say that this is something that is going to happen tomorrow or the next year or the next few years. It's still a concern, and methane is still our biggest problem potentially in the long run because of its much more exacerbated impacts on the environment than any other thing that we can put up there. But that was sort of the impetus to go do the film, and the film had changed a little bit as we had worked on it. Whereas it was going to be this kind of a very sort of scary, we're in a lot of trouble kind of a movie. We decided as we started working on it and finding out about mitigation, especially, or sequestration of carbon, that it may have been maybe the best idea to kind of do a half and half and have one aspect of the movie be understanding how we've gotten to where we've gotten to and how dire it is. And on the other hand, also try to showcase and show these potential technologies, some that are literally based out in nature, like what you guys are doing, or something like biochar, which we also found up there, or some kind of new technologies which we haven't quite seen on Earth before, and they've been developed really in the last 10 years, and one of them being direct air capture, for example. So we wanted to kind of do a little bit of both, and that was the decision we made probably about halfway into making the film. It became a pretty clear thing to us that we needed to offer solutions, or at least let people know that there are solutions out there. There's many of them. There are many that we couldn't fit into the film. And one of them happened to be your guys' project, and the way that came about was, as we were doing all this research, Lila had come across your project, and then it hit her that actually she had contributed to your project. She had actually bought as present to some people for like New Year's or like Christmas, trees, actually, like tree planting was a gift, and it was actually with you guys, and this was some years ago. So she was very, very happy to find out that not only was this a good deed and a lot of people are doing it, but that this was actually an incredibly potent and a powerful project as far as sequestration goes, and in fact was one of the best ones, one of the best forest-based projects that exist on the planet. So she was very excited to have that in the movie. It was something she had been involved with and then didn't even realize how big it was or how effective it was. And so we went up there and we obviously filmed with you guys, and we knew that this was going to be in a film at the end no matter what, and it was going to highlight this one really important area, which is the tree planting area, which maybe is an obvious one to some people, but I think it can't be understated how important it is, especially in certain areas and in certain kinds of trees. And then as we obviously went up there to film that, we learned more about biochar, which obviously is this other big project happening in that area. And we figured, okay, that's a great one also to include in a movie. Besides trapping carbon, what it could do for agriculture, the potential of it. And now we know that even state of California has a program or thinking about starting programs to try to fund some of that for farmers and to find ways to educate farmers in use of biochar and so on. So it's obviously something big, and a lot of people are now considering it. And as soon as we learned about it, we knew we were going to include it in a movie. So that was sort of the kind of a very quick overview of what had happened here. And we had filmed obviously quite a few technologies, and it was there were some tough decisions to make as well in the editing room as to what gets included of all these things. But I was happy that actually we ended up actually including both projects that are on your land there in the movie, and that a lot of people got to see them, and we got a lot of feedback based on that from a lot of people that they were going to invest in your trees and planting, and also we've heard from some people about buying biochar, for example, and using it for different reasons, sometimes just in their backyard or whatever it is. But there were quite a few people that have seen it in a movie and responded to that, and they liked it. And hopefully that reflects at least in some way or on your guys' success there, and funding or whatever it is. We wanted, I think, part about making this movie was to try to find a way to get people to know about these projects and technologies, and hopefully get them to invest in it. And Lila and a few others put together a kind of a sub-project to the film, which is Catching Carbon, which is a way to donate money to a website, which then gives that money to, say, you guys or somebody who's doing kelp farms, to help finance, say, planting of the trees, or maybe creating a new kelp farm or something of that sort. One of these sort of climate mitigation technologies or projects, which an individual can contribute to, and if you get enough individuals, we can actually get something happening. I think one of these, for example, kelp farms that we have in the movie, it takes about $30,000–$40,000 to start one, which isn't at all impossible to obviously crowdfund. It's something that's highly possible, and we have somebody on the ground that can get that money and actually start one. So that's one of the things we also wanted to do, is not just to have a movie, but to have some actions that followed by as many people as are willing to do those, to contribute some money or contribute their time, maybe volunteer for some of these projects. And we got many letters, or I should say emails, of people talking about that and being engaged, and also an enormous amount of requests to screen the movie from all around the world. I'm gonna guess probably in the thousands of requests, 5,000 to 10,000 requests for screenings or more at this point. So there's obviously been a response. There's been quite a few people that have seen the movie. It's on every airplane, not that people are flying now all that much, but it's on every airplane basically in a world that has video. They can watch our movie. And that's often where people see it and let us know that have seen it. And so yeah, and HBO has really, I think, been supportive of the project in a sense of placing it everywhere for free, so people don't have to pay for it in some of these platforms, and also just releasing it on the internet for free for a while, where people were able to see it in large numbers. And so in other words, there's been support of this project that is maybe atypical of the way studios handle documentaries, where they often are very hands-off, and once the documentary is out, they're not really involved all that much with it, and they're certainly not giving it away for free, which these guys did. So that we were very happy about that. And in fact, our wish was to just flat out give away the movie for free if possible, anywhere we can, because the idea is to get people educated on this and get them to understand what's going on in the world. And we, I still think vast majority of people don't even understand what carbon is, much less sequestering it or even the impacts of burning so much carbon into the atmosphere. Most people just don't understand that. I don't think they even remember that out of their high school lessons, if they even remember those. And it's important to have as much media out there trying to just base level educate people on the problem. I think that's important, that I'm glad we did that in the movie, but also just be more hopeful about it. I think if we're doom and gloom and say that we're all going to die because of what's happening in the world, that's not going to be a particularly effective way to use the 2 years we had to put in to making this movie. I think we had to also say, no, there's definitely ways we can help out and even potentially reverse everything that's happening, but there isn't a whole lot of time to do that before it becomes so costly or complicated or even impossible. But anyway, so that took us around the project around the world, in quite a few countries over about a 2-year period. And we were very fortunate to premiere in Cannes, which is about as good of a festival premiere as you can hope for. And that got us a fairly large amount of press and interest, and we were very happy about that. Sometimes with these films, especially with difficult subjects like this, which aren't the most sexy subjects for an audience, that often things get released, nobody really gets to see them, and they get forgotten very quickly, that we didn't fall into that trap, and that we did get a fairly large audience that keeps growing every day. And that there was, support by the festivals, by the studio, and so on. But anyway, so that's kind of in a general sense and about this film. And it's, for me personally, it was a long process of a lot of travel and a lot of difficult locations. We had spent time in the Arctic at really brutal temperatures, which were very difficult to shoot in. They were very punishing on our equipment. And punishing on our bodies and our mental health, probably. When you're out there for a month and you're out in those kind of temperatures, doesn't matter how ready you are for it, it really is exhausting. And I still think very few people can be in those environments and thrive in them and stay in them a long time. For most of us, it wears us down pretty quickly. And we had, but by the time it was all said and done in those cold temperatures, we were very tired of dealing with it. But I think what pretty much kept everybody going, that was part of the movie, is that we felt we were working on something worthwhile and that was important for people to see. And as crappy as it may be to deal with sort of the production difficulties, which every movie has some form of their own production difficulties, I think for us it was just the sheer amount of travel and radical changes of locations. We had, for example, been in Svalbard 1 week, and then 2 days later we're down in Costa Rica shooting, and we go from -60 to like plus 120 temperatures. So I mean, the equipment was just having a lot of trouble dealing with that, and we had to constantly attend to it and take care of it in order to be able to shoot in these conditions. To go from something that's so cold and freezing to basically a highly humid area. And either way, your equipment suffers and you're physically very exhausted. But yeah, and that was about 2 years off and on of that, and then last year was a very good year, I thought, for the movie, and I was happy to see everybody from your organization that was able to make it down to Los Angeles for the premiere. You got to see it on a big screen, which is very nice, and I'm sure you've heard from people, and I'm curious who you've heard from that have seen the movie and had wanted to help you guys, or I've been obviously moving on and working on other projects since, but I do every so many days get some kind of an ice and fire email or somebody calling or commenting, so it's good. There's an engagement, and it's kept going now for 7-8 months or more, almost a year, I guess, since the very first screening of the movie. So yeah, that's my sort of a short spiel on this. And I know Lila was going to talk a little bit more about certain things that were very specific to her own experience. And I'm sure she'll be able to do that on a video once she feels a little better. And you guys can post that. That's, as much as I understand, is going to happen, that she will actually do a little video for you guys and talk about some of those issues. And yeah, that's about it. And if you have any particular questions or things you would like me to address, I can expand upon that and talk a little bit more about it.
Thank you, Harun, for stepping in and also for sharing your magnificent cinematography. The film is really breathtaking and has helped the Redwood Forest Foundation get our message out to a wider population of people. So thank you. Now, please take a few minutes to type your questions for Harun, and he will be back in a few minutes to answer them.
The first one I can address here is by Hannah, and she was asking, have you considered making a second part of the movie that's just focusing on solutions, especially the ones that had to be cut out? It's very difficult to get full-blown feature films made, and very rarely do you do a documentary and you do a follow-up documentary of this kind. What we will do at some point, hopefully, is take some of that footage that we had to cut out, and we'll do little short films on particular things like, say you're a forest project. We may do like a little standalone video, which is more friendly to social media sharing, because obviously with feature films, you're not going to post one on your Twitter or your Facebook. But, you know, if we can put together little short films which explain some of these, you know, that are like 5 to 10 minutes in length or something like that, maybe even a little shorter in certain cases, that we are planning to do that. So we won't throw away all that footage or leave it somewhere. There will be some things that get done with that, and that's hopefully coming in, you know, within this year. We got a little disrupted, obviously, with what's happened with the virus, and a lot of the productions have just kind of come to a stop for almost a half a year now. And once that all picks up, and you know, once we get everything going, we do plan to do some cut some shorts, and some will address the couple of projects you guys have up there, and as well as some stuff we didn't even feature in the movie. So that is coming, but not in the form of another feature film, in the form of shorts. Is where you're going to see it. Now let's see. Another question was, Harun, thank for your talk. It was great. After filming Ice and Fire Doc, have you made any changes to your video productions to lower your carbon footprint? As a fellow video producer, I'm always looking for ways to lower my environmental impact in locations I film in. You know, we're very minimalist as far as our shooting goes. We did most of our shoots in a single day, and with a very minimal crew. So whereas you have some documentaries where you may have 20, 30 people working at any given time on it, on the production, certainly things you see on, say, like National Geographic fall really under that. Where you have large crews and a lot of people flying around and a lot of people driving around to get to locations. Obviously, carbon footprint there is going to be larger. I think what we've done, the way we've sort of dealt with this to kind of have a, you know, both be positive as far as trying to not clutter, you know, the environment with and stomp all over certain environment with 50 people, is we keep our crews very small. We are very focused on what we are going in to get at any given location. We also just try to minimize obviously the amount of flying and the amount of driving as much as we possibly can. And because we're more of a kind of a guerrilla unit, even though we worked for HBO, and you would think this is a studio movie, and you know how many people would have been involved, and our actual shooting crew was very small. It was, by and large, it was 2 to 3 people at these locations, sometimes a little more than that. But we keep it very tight, and that helps as far as carbon footprint. That's what we're going to keep doing in the future, regardless of what the budget is of the movie. Obviously, when you are trying to save money and your budget might not be high on a certain project, then obviously you want to keep your crew small. As tight as you can. But our belief has always been, even on movies where there's a larger budget, this one certainly had a larger budget than an average documentary. It's still good not to waste money if you can. It's still good to come under budget. It's not just the impact on the environment. It's just sort of shelling out cash isn't exactly what we celebrate. Making these movies is, we're not in them to make a ton of money. It's not really an industry where you're making a ton of money anyway. And just spending it, given what the circumstances are in the world, needlessly and uselessly, is also something we'd like to avoid. So, I still think, the way we work is about as minimal as a documentary can be, as far as impacting the environment. And I think with feature films, with crews of 300 to 400 people, I think this is a much bigger question and an issue, because just the sheer amount of people that travel to a location where you have maybe sometimes 500-600 people, or 1,000 even, or more in certain films, and there the impacts can be much larger. In fact, they can be in some cases very devastating for locations where those movies take place in. And I think it is a bigger concern for them. Not that it isn't a concern for us, but I think just given how small our crews are, it hasn't been that much of an issue, nor have we ever heard really back from a location where we went and had people complain. We do try to be as respectful as we can about the environment, because our environment is our interest and is our passion, and that's what we want to make a lot of movies about. So we're also, as part of that, very respectful to the environment, not just by telling the stories, but also just how we conduct ourselves in it.
Well, why don't we conclude there, and if anybody has any other questions, they can continue to send them in, and maybe we can send them along to Harun for a future answer. Thank you, Harun, and for taking part in our event today, and we look forward to following your career and seeing your next film projects. I would like to take a few seconds to talk about the Redwood Forest Foundation's future from 2020 and beyond. As Kathy Moxon mentioned, RFFI is in the process of completing a new strategic plan to establish a sustainable future for RFFI and a model for working community forestry across the country. Many are surprised to know that there are more than 1 million acres of coast redwoods remaining in private hands in the state of California. Coast redwoods are the tallest and some of the oldest trees in the world. And they also sequester more carbon per acre than any forest in the world, including the Amazon rainforest. Of course, redwood forests also provide clean air and clean water to much of California. After all, forests are the lungs of the planet. Some of those 1 million acres will be restored and moved into reserves, but most of them need to continue to pay their way, producing wood products and jobs for local communities. That's where the Redwood Forest Foundation comes in. Our experiment is to acquire and manage these young redwood forests for sustainability and on a large watershed scale. That means building back the forest stands and restoring habitat and species to health, while still producing jobs and wood products. This is an enormous challenge, but RFFI now has 13 years of experience doing this in the Usal forest, making us a national leader. As I mentioned, the other thing that makes RFFI unique is that we manage the forest with governance and engagement of the local communities that live there and depend on the forest, which we are dedicated to, and we are dedicated to bringing the benefits of and the profits of the forest back to these local communities. So in summary, RFFI is addressing climate change, is restoring large redwood forests to health, is continuing to produce wood products and jobs on a sustainable basis, is bringing the profits back to the local communities. In the next year, RFFI plans to complete the acquisition of the 95-acre rice ranch, which Kathy spoke about, partnering with local nonprofits to restore our watersheds and the coho streams, working with local tribes to establish a dedicated native acorn gathering site on the property, building trails, providing local educational programs, and in the future, we hope to practice our model on other lands. Now, many people say to me, why do you need charitable gifts when you have a big forestry business generating income? The answer is simple. All of the revenues from the Usal forestry operation are restricted for paying off our Usal forest debt and will be for years to come. So charitable gifts are essential for RFFI to support all of the programs that you care about and that benefit our community, including restoration, development of forest products such as biochar, and of course, other wood products, educational and citizen science projects, trail building, the development of the rice ranch, and any future land acquisitions. Now, at this important and challenging time in the COVID world, all of us, myself included, support many causes. But I ask that you keep the health of the forests and the planet high on your list. Please stretch and make the largest contribution you can afford today to the Redwood Forest Foundation so that we can continue this important work uninterrupted. You can donate today at www.rffi.org. And please help us reach our goal of raising $100,000 from individual gifts by September 1st. I'm delighted to introduce the third and final Voices from the Community video, and afterwards, Kathy Moxon will join us again for an important announcement.
Hi, I'm John Rogers. I've been on the RFFI board about 10 years. I got involved in forestry in the early 1990s on the founding board of the Institute for Sustainable Forestry. Since that time, RFFI's community-based model has emerged as our strongest opportunity to see a truly regenerative style of sustainable forestry move forward on the North Coast. A model that provides high-quality wood products as well as community and ecosystem services, from climate mitigation to wildlife habitat to clear running streams. Please come and visit us and support our efforts. Thank you.
For me, the defining characteristic of RFFI has always been optimism. And it's an incredibly optimistic organization in the sense that it's living proof that the lines that divide us don't have to be drawn in such dark ink, and that sometimes intractable problems have solutions, that if we come together and work together and communicate honestly and in a spirit of good faith, can leave everyone, if not always satisfied, at least with the belief that we're doing our best. And it turns out that that's a tremendous revolutionary way of thinking, and something that's absent in the discourse oftentimes these days. And that's why I'm so proud to have been and continue to be involved with the organization. And all of you should be too.
You know what really excites me about RFFI? We live in very contentious times, and here is an organization made up of two former adversaries, environmentalists and timber interests, working together for the benefit of everybody.
The idea was to find ways to restore and protect the forest, improve ecosystem function, sustain timber and jobs into the future, and involve the community at every step along the way.
Sounds like a win-win to me.
And we are doing it.
Hi, my name is Mitzi Ryder, and this is Sebastian. I want to tell you what I love about the Redwood Forest Foundation. It's a community-based organization making a positive difference in an ever-changing world. Forests are the lungs of the planet, and healthy forests create healthy communities. Please consider a gift to Redwood Forest Foundation. Sebastian thanks you, and so do I.
Mark says she's going to do an announcement. Well, what I'm really going to do is talk to you about the board of directors. So every year we do the election of our board of directors, and we announce our current board and the officers at our annual meeting. And just to give you just a little bit of background, the board members are all volunteer. They serve 3-year terms. Those terms are staggered, so we have approximately a third of our board that comes up for re-election every year. There's a maximum of 3 3-year board terms a board member can serve. This year, Richard Ganger, Heidi Gunling, Bill Snyder, and myself were re-elected for our second 3-year terms. So I just wanted to let you know what the current composition of the board is. John Rogers, who you heard from in the video, is our board secretary, and he is a retired general manager of Redwood Community Services and was formerly with the Institute for Sustainable Forestry, and he's also a woodworker. He's a Humboldt County resident. Candy Scarlatas, who's our treasurer, is a retired senior vice president of environmental initiatives for Bank of America and is a Mendocino County resident. Mike Baylock is currently the Vice President of Capital Markets for American Ag Credit. He specializes in forest properties, and he's a resident of Marin County. Richard Ginger is an environmental activist and co-founder of the Sinkyone Council. He's a staunch defender of the Sally Bell Grove and lives at the convergence of Mendocino and Humboldt counties. And while technically I think he lives in Mendocino County, I read someplace that he is actually a resident of both counties. Go figure. Heidi Knott Gunling is an international documentary film producer and the organizer of environmental film festivals. And she's a resident of Mendocino County. Steve Pearson is a retired scientist, engineer, manager, and executive of AECOM, where his last assignment was the executive chair of their Asia Pacific operations. We know him best as our biochar guru, and Steve's a resident of Mendocino County. Jeff Rahm is a professor of environmental sciences at the University of California at Berkeley. He's a resident of Alameda County. Kendall Smith, who's a former supervisor of Mendocino County, is a resident of Mendocino County. William Snyder, Bill, is the retired deputy director of California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, or CAL FIRE. He is a resident of Sonoma County. And Bill Wilkinson, who's the retired principal of Baldwin, Blomstrom, and Wilkinson and Associates. They're consulting forestry and environmental analysis specialists. He's a resident of Trinity County. He's our farthest driver for board meetings. And myself, I'm the president, I'll be the president for another year. And I'm the director of Redwood Coast Rural Action, which is a network of community leaders working across the 4 northwestern counties in California. And I am a resident in Humboldt County. Mark, bring it home.
Thank you, Kathy. RFFI has a terrific board, and each member brings an important perspective for our planning and our governance. So in wrapping up, I'd like to take a minute again to thank today's event sponsors and also the people who made donations today. Our Redwood sponsors are Tree Media, Barnett Logging, KOZT, the Coast Radio, Southern California Gas, and U.S. Forest Capital. I also want to give a big thanks to my terrific, talented, and hardworking staff, especially Emily Ellickson Brown, who moved heaven and earth to make this production happen and was working behind the scenes today. There is a myth in nonprofit management, by the way, that events run themselves, and I can tell you that it's not true. Thank you, Emily. Also, Lynn Barrett, Mitzi Ryder, Karen Youngblood, and Linwood Gill. And of course, thanks to all of you who joined us today and also those who donated to the Redwood Forest Foundation today. We hope you enjoyed the RFFI annual meeting. Now, as we wrap up, I want to show you one final video. This year, RFFI has postponed 5 in-person events, but we still have one on the calendar. Keep your fingers crossed. On October 17th, RFFI is hosting the 3rd annual Usal Hopper mountain biking race, produced by Grasshopper Adventures. I had the good fortune of attending, though I didn't participate in last year's event, which drew 200 riders. And afterwards, RFFI staff and I led a hike to visit one of the Usal forest restoration sites for many of the riders, which was really a fun thing to do. So please enjoy the virtual ride through the Usal forest from last year's Usal Hopper race, and then come join us on October 17th for the 3rd annual Usal Hopper. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, how you feeling, buddy? Sick.
No, we're gonna bring that warm.
We're gonna get warm. I actually have a light. We hope to see you tonight at the fire.
Yeah.
on, buddy? How's your day? Good. Yeah. Woo.